views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
On this edition of Perspectives, it was another defeat for a Democratic incumbent. Representative Eliot Engel is defeated by Jamaal Bowman. He joins us next on this edition of Perspectives as he talks about his race towards Washington. That's Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
What's your perspective? Let them know.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Of course, we thank you for joining us. You can watch Perspectives every week live here on BronxNet's Channel 67. If you have Verizon Fios, of course, that would be Channel 33 or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. We also encourage you. You can watch some past episodes of Perspectives. All you got to do is go down to the link that you see on the screen, and guess what? You'll be able to tap into some past episodes of Perspectives and really get a perspective. Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center with the issue of politics and more particularly a race that was hotly contested right here in our area. Joining me now to share a little bit more about the race for the 16th Congressional District is none other than Jamaal Bowman. He actually defeated incumbent Eliot Engel in the race for the congressional seat. It happened. Many people were surprised. Some people not surprised. But guess what? If you don't know about Jamaal Bowman, guess what? He'll tell you right about it right now. A former school principal and also an educator and a new member of the Progressive Democratic Wing. He joins us now here on Perspectives. And yes, good to have you.
Thank you, sir. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
So let me ask you, first of all, how are you doing? I mean, obviously, a hotly contested race. A lot of people viewed it as a surprise upset, but for you, it's what you wanted to have happen. How's it going for you since the election?
It's going very well. We're obviously very happy with the results, very excited about getting to work, very excited that the people came out very strongly to support us. You know, we were able to triple voter turnout. Overall, from the last primary, we were able to triple voter turnout amongst young people, amongst people of color. We won both the Bronx and Westchester side of the district, and in certain parts of the district, we just did very well. So it's exciting, it's humbling. I feel very fortunate to be here in this moment and get ready to work. And I'm going to take a vacation first to recharge my batteries. Then we'll get started right away.
What do you think made the difference in this particular election? I mean, unseating an incumbent, Eliot Engel, who has been in Congress for a long period of time. What do you think was the difference maker for you?
Well, first of all, we had a tremendous team. You know, my campaign manager, Luke Hayes, field director, Bilal Tahir, comms advisor, Rebecca Katz, the Justice Democrats, Working Families Party, Jewish Vote, so many grassroots organizations that helped us out. So we had an amazing team and a ton of support. We started with well over 500 volunteers. That number grew to 1,000. We made 1.2 million phone calls during this campaign. But most importantly, we connected with the people in the communities that have been most ignored and most neglected over the years. So we were knocking doors in Edenwald, Wakefield, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Co-op City, in the Black and brown and low-income communities that haven't been a part of the democratic process. So we wanted to bring them in early and often and use their stories and their voices to craft the policies we need most in Washington.
Yeah, and before we move a little bit further into policy and talk a little bit about policy, I want to get your perspective. I know that you guys were very adamant about speaking out about Congressman Engel's absence during COVID-19. How much do you think that really played in the particular minds in the hearts and minds of voters?
Well, the voters told us from the very beginning that Congressman Ingle was absent. So we were just repeating to the public what the voters in the district had already known. You know, he was in office for 31 years. He lived in Maryland for 27 of those years. You know, he wasn't present, he wasn't engaged, and people felt it was time for a change. The big issue that came up during the campaign was his absence during the pandemic. You know, he had tweeted that he was going to be in the district in Co-op City and in Mount Vernon giving out groceries, when in fact he was in Maryland at his home. So that was a big turning point. It revealed what many people had already knew about his absence. And then his hot mic moment was another big turning point in the campaign, because he gave voice to the spirit that was already in the air in terms of his lack of presence.
Well, let's talk a little bit about moving forward from now. Obviously, with the defeat, there's still a little election left. So talk to us a little bit about that. How are you gearing up?
Well, there's a general election, but this is a deep Democratic district. So we feel if we do the work, if we do our job and continue to build a strong Democratic base, we should be able to win that election. And we're going to continue to keep racial and economic justice front and center. We're going to continue to talk about housing as a human right, healthcare as a human right, police reform and criminal justice reform, fully funding our public schools, and bringing job opportunities here to the district. We need it now more than ever because of COVID, but as we know, our communities have been underserved for far too long, and we're going to continue to center those issues and create policy around those issues that matter most.
In the beginning, we talked about a progressive Democratic agenda, and that's what you're attached to. Talk to us about the progressive Democratic agenda, and what does that represent?
It means meeting the needs of working class people. It means making sure no one dies because they don't have health care. It means investing more in health care and education in the working class than we do in our military and our police departments. Our community, our country has been over-militarized, has been over-policed, and we continue to allow wealth to be concentrated in the hands of a few while the majority of us suffer. So the progressive agenda is about a Green New Deal. It's about Medicare for all. It's about fully funding our public schools and investing in Black, minority, and women-owned businesses. And it's about bottom-up economics and really centering those who have been ignored. It's about righting the wrongs of our country's history, you know, and where we are now is set up by political design. It's about reversing that design towards meeting the needs of everyone.
And when we talk about that, I mean, we talk about the fact of a lot needs to be done in terms of reform in America. What do you see as your top priority if elected?
Yesterday, Jeff Bezos made $13 billion in one day, while we have 20 million people out of work, while we have tens of millions of children and families starving because of poverty. It's unacceptable. So economic inequality is going to be a target of ours, as well as racial injustice. Institutional racism lives in every American institution. It's not just police brutality and mass incarceration. It's also miseducation. It's also lack of health care. It's also environmental injustice. There's so much work to do around racial and economic injustice, and that's going to be our focus once we get to Washington.
Yeah, and looking around, of course, in Washington right now, we have a lot of talk, particularly dealing with the issue of educational reform. I'm gonna come to that. In the next segment. But before we go to break on this segment right here, let's talk a little bit about your area. What do you identify as the biggest need right now?
In my district?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we need jobs and healthcare and housing and massive federal investment in terms of infrastructure. You know, we have parts of this district where the poverty rate is as high as 70%. These areas have been completely neglected. You take Yonkers, for example, 50% of the homeless in Westchester County live in Yonkers. We need 70,000 affordable homes as we speak. When you drive through Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, parts of New Rochelle, and the North Bronx, you see boarded up buildings and you see vacant lots. And then you drive through Scarsdale and Bronxville and Rye, and you see beautiful multi-million-dollar homes. I mean, that's unacceptable. It's preposterous, and it's something that is a problem throughout our country. So again, racial and economic justice, those are the two pillars that we're going to create policy around as soon as we get to Washington.
Going to take a quick break, come back with Jamaal Bowman talking about him unseating incumbent Eliot Engel in the Democratic primary. More here on Perspectives. We're coming right back in a few. And we are back here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you, and we are talking with Jamaal Bowman, the one who's unseated incumbent Eliot Engel in the race for Congress. Still has the general election ahead of him, but the major victory in defeating Congressman Eliot Engel, the incumbent, in a highly Democratic area as things continue to move forward. He joins us here on Perspectives. And yes, I was getting ready to say Congressman Bowman, and I'm sure that that's pretty much the way that things go in a highly Democratic area, but we take nothing for granted. Talk to us a little bit about this for a moment. Education. I know you're big on educational reform. You're a former educator yourself. What was the impetus for you to enter into the ring of politics, given the fact that you've got this huge educational background?
Well, the education space is very political. The New York City Department of Education in particular is the largest, most dense bureaucracy in the country. And because I became a founding principal of a middle school in the Northeast Bronx, I got to experience the politics of the Department of Education up close and personally. I've also been an education organizer, working with parents and community groups across the state to fight for education justice issues at the state level, pushing for more equitable funding for our schools, culturally responsive curriculum, restorative justice, trauma-informed practices. So I've done a lot of work in the political space. And the problem for me, I didn't see the same sense of urgency happening outside of education. And during the 2017-2018 school year, 34 children died within the K-12 school system in the Bronx, and 17 died via suicide. And as an educator, we understand the connection between trauma, poverty, and bad policy. And it just came to the point in my life where it was just unacceptable. And when I saw that Congressman Engel in the last primary only won this primary with a total of 30,000 people voted, he got 22,000 of those votes. We figured that we could do better, not just at the ballot box, but by building a movement where everyone's involved in not just education justice issues, but justice issues in all its forms.
And when we look at what's happening right now, talking about COVID-19 and the reopening of schools, there's a lot of talk about reopening of schools with COVID-19 and this reopening phase. Some people are saying, listen, we are going too quickly. Other people are saying it's time to get started. Give us your perspective on how you see things, particularly as an educator.
Well, I have a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, and if schools were opening next week, I would not be sending my children to school. Our plan is not creative enough. Our plan is not safe enough. And our plan requires massive federal investment. And when I say creative, we have to begin to use alternative learning spaces for our kids to keep class sizes as small as possible and to keep them safe. So we're pushing and we're encouraging school districts to look at environmental learning opportunities and outside learning opportunities. We're also pushing for districts to look at theaters and office spaces that are not being used. But in order for this to happen, we need massive federal investment to make sure we have a mandated mask policy, mandated gloves policy. Our learning spaces are kept clean, the ventilation is quality, and most importantly, we hire more teachers. We're going to need more instructors, teachers, teacher assistants, caregivers as well, to provide the care and nurturing environment that our kids need. There's a lot of work to be done. We have the absolute worst president possible as we deal with this, but it looks like the Senate as well as the House are crafting the right bills to make sure we're as ready as we possibly can be in September.
Progressive Democratic Agenda. That's the platform that you run on. That's the platform that you're known for. Is America ready for it?
We better be. If we're not ready for it, we better get ready for it. I mean, we have to understand we're living through the second biggest crisis since the Great Depression. And what happened during the Great Depression? FDR implemented a New Deal. He created the Workers of Progress Administration, and he got millions of people back to work in labor and union jobs. And if we don't implement something as bold as that in this moment, we're going to sink deeper into catastrophe, deeper into inequality, and deeper into the racial injustice that we see. So now is the time in our country's history to be bold. I mean, look, when you look at American history, when you look at the abolitionist movement to end slavery, the women's movement to give women the right to vote and to travel and to work, the LGBTQ movement to give the gay community rights, the civil rights movement, which was a fight for civil rights. When you look at America, it's a history of movements to transform the political landscape to get things done in our country. We're in a movement now. We're in the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, how is America going to respond? And I feel very fortunate and very blessed to be a policymaker in this moment where we can put forth the right policies that are urgent, that are progressive, and that uplift all of the people in this country, not just a few.
Well, let's talk about policy, because in order for policy to go forward, it has to be a bipartisan effort, especially the way things are right now in Washington, D.C. You're going in on the Democratic side. Some people say, listen, it's been very bipartisan, or has lacked bipartisanship in Washington, D.C. How can you give those who you represent the assurance that things will happen and go forward, given the lack of bipartisanship that's going on currently in Washington?
Yeah, well, I don't think that things have been bipartisan, to your point. The Republicans have been winning, and the conservative wing of the Democratic Party has been winning for far too long. Too many of us have sold our soul to corporate interests, and we've allowed the wealthy to take over. We have three white men, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Mr. Buffett. They own more wealth than the bottom 50% of our country. That's the system that's currently in place. Our elected officials are bought and paid for and co-opted by corporate interests. So we need to sever the ties that we have to corporate interests and begin to meet the needs of the American people. So that's what being a progressive is all about. We don't take any money from corporate PACs. We don't take money from fossil fuel companies or weapons manufacturers. We don't take money from any of them because we are accountable to the people. And if Joe Biden wins the presidency and the Senate is flipped by Democrats, Democrats will have control of the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Now, when that happens, what are we going to do with that power, and how are we going to maintain that power? Because when we had it under Obama, we had it for 2 years, and then we lost it. And in that 2 years, he was able to get his health care bill passed, Obamacare, but we weren't able to do much else. So what are we going to do in this moment when Democrats take back the power? We have to be bold, we have to be centered morally, and we have to meet the needs of the American people.
As you prepare to set your sights towards Washington and possibly that congressional seat, you'll be an African-American congressman. And of course, people will be...
Really? I didn't realize that. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I think somewhere along the line, they're going to call you that after a minute. But I want to draw center on another one that just recently passed away, and that's Congressman John Lewis. And I want to just get your impact or his impact on you and how that shapes you as you approach moving towards that seat.
Well, John Lewis has shaped my entire life. He is the epitome of marching literally for justice, spending his entire life fighting for racial justice to the point where he was arrested well over 40 times. He was beaten as a peaceful protester, always nonviolent, beaten mercilessly by police and by others, had his skull cracked, had a concussion. He's the ultimate warrior and fighter that represents the civil rights movement. And he was in Congress for a very long time. And watching him from afar, and many civil rights icons from afar, I was always inspired by them individually and the movement overall. So I've always tried to be a movement educator when I was in the classroom, and we were a movement candidate during this campaign. And now in Congress, we're going to continue to work on racial and economic justice issues. We are taking the baton. We are picking up where the great John Lewis has left off, and we're going to continue to do that work.
Yeah, incredible legacy left by Congressman John Lewis. I need you to join this movement with me. I'm taking a move to break, so stay with us. We'll come right back here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with Jamaal Bowman as he heads towards a possible congressional seat. We'll get his final thoughts in this last segment when we return right after this. We're back here on Perspectives. Daren Jaime here with you. We are continuing our conversation with Jamaal Bowman as he is looking to take that seat in the 16th Congressional District. And that's, of course, deals with the borough of the Bronx. That deals with Westchester County. A lot of land to cover, but he's gotten so far in the Democratic primary. Of course, the general election right around the corner. And I want to get to this question here about having so much land to cover. We talk about the Bronx. We talk about Westchester County. How are you going to be able to meet those needs? I mean, I know Congressman Engel came under fire for not being able to meet the needs of the district, but it is a huge district. How do you plan on being able to tackle this wealth of land?
Well, it's not that big, brother. I mean, there are some districts around the country where you have to take a flight from one part of the district to the other. So this is not too bad. You know, we start in the Northeast Bronx. We go over to the Northwest Bronx in Riverdale, over to Hastings on the Hudson, and then over to Rye, New York. So it's you could drive through the entire district in a half hour to an hour, depending on traffic. But no, you know, from the very beginning, we aimed, our mission was to build a diverse coalition to meet the needs of everyone in the district. And we had volunteers and employees and supporters from every single town in the district. So in terms of going there, listening to the concerns, building relationships, connecting with folk, we were able to do that throughout. And that's what we're going to continue to do. My job is to now hire the best team possible to make sure we're not only meeting the needs of the people in the district, but writing the right policy in Washington. So far, so good. You know, I know I'm not in this by myself. We have a team, a huge team that's ready to get to work. So that's what we're going to do. So thankfully, we're not in a district where, you know, you got to take a flight from one part to the other. We can actually drive through it in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, depending on traffic, you could get fast. You might be able to catch a flight and get faster. I tell you that. With all that's going on between the Bronx and Westchester County, it is definitely a lot of land to contend with. But you're absolutely right there. Let me get this question in here about the progressive Democratic agenda, and I want to talk about the Democratic establishment because there seems to be this mix between when you talk about the progressive agenda and the Democratic establishment. Do you find that the Democratic Party is fractured?
I wouldn't say that. I think there's a healthy tension that exists. You know, it's important for, you know, older folk, more established folk to connect and engage and build relationships with younger folk. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're fighting together to meet the needs of the American people. That's the bottom line. It's not about me as an individual. It's not personal. It's about what are the needs of my constituents and our constituents. So no, Democratic Party is not fractured. We're in a healthy place of dialogue, debate, and tension so that we can move the country forward. I like where we are. I'm excited by where we are and looking forward to building a new country that works for everyone. This is a great opportunity. I mean, America has never fully met the needs from a racial and economic and gender standpoint of the people in this country. And this is our time. This is our opportunity to build something new and build something special.
Do you feel as though that the Democratic Party has done a sufficient job in having a message that is simply not anti-Trump? Because a lot of people thought that being anti-Trump will be the way to make it in, but some people say, listen, there's not enough of a message. Do you feel like there's enough?
Well, I'm excited by Joe Biden's recent platforms around childcare and climate in particular. I'm excited that Joe Biden decided to be a part of a Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden alliance to bring together the progressive wing and the more moderate wing of the Democratic Party. And we're pushing out platforms once again that are meeting the needs of the American people. Childcare is like a mortgage payment. It's something that's way too expensive, and it's a part of what keeps people in debt prisons. I mean, when you look at childcare, education costs, housing costs, food, car, utilities, and the fact that real wages have been stagnant for 30 years. So when you look at all of these factors, you realize that we need a program that provides universal childcare. We need to make college free at the point of delivery when we're talking about public colleges and two-year colleges and trade schools. There's so much that needs to get done in alignment with the needs of the working class, because we cannot continue to have a system where Jeff Bezos makes over $13 billion in one day while the majority of Americans are suffering. We have a system where over 140,000 people have died from the coronavirus pandemic, but the billionaire class has grown right here in New York, increasing their wealth by $77 billion while people are dying. It's a morally bankrupt system. It's a genocidal system, and it's something that we have to dramatically change right now. And the Democratic Party seems poised to be a part of making that change.
As we get out of here, please tell people, as your candidacy moves forward and you try to move towards Washington, D.C., how do they get in touch? How do they find out more about Jamaal Bowman?
Absolutely. Please go to bowmanforcongress.com. Check out our platform. Check out our endorsers. Make a contribution. Every dollar helps. And please, not just get out there and vote, but organize people in your community around the issues that matter most. Email the campaign so we can be a part of the conversation and offer supports in any way that we can. And also, please make sure to complete your census. We need everyone in the district to complete their census. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in resources that will not come here if we do not complete our census. So we need everyone to be on board with that as well.
Jamaal Bowman, our guest here on Perspectives, thank you so much. And of course, you're more than welcome to come back. If elected, if not elected, whatever. Listen, we always want you to be back here on the show. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me.
All right, Jamaal Bowman, our guest here on Perspectives, and we're going to wrap it up here. That about wraps it up for this edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. Telling you that if you want to watch Perspectives, yes, every week here on Bronx's Channel 67. We also have Channel 33 on Verizon Fios or anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. Of course, you can also rewatch past episodes of Perspectives. All you got to do is just catch it and tap onto the link. That'll take you right there to some past episodes, and you can be all caught up. For all of us here on the set of Perspectives, Daren Jaime say take care, God bless. Hey, make sure you share your perspective. You never know. It just might make a difference in somebody else's life. Peace and blessings.